All right, folks, let's go ahead and get started. Thanks again for jumping in the webinar today. I see a lot more people have just joined in, which is great. I'm sure we'll see that number increase here over the next several minutes. That's totally fine. Keep in mind, we are recording this as well. So anybody that joins live, you'll get a copy of this as a follow-up along with a workbook that the Institute has put together. My name's Cavan Robinson. I'm the general manager of Shop Boss. We are really, really excited to bring in one of our close partners, one of our new partners, the Institute, represented today by Jimmy and Cecil, who are going to be coming on here in just a moment. So as you go through today's session, make sure that you're actively listening. This is all about conversation and engagement. Jimmy's going to go through some of the logistics of the Zoom webinar platform to make sure that you're using that Q&A box. And we really want to make sure that today is as beneficial and educational as possible for you. So Jimmy, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you to take over.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
You nailed it. You got it. Appreciate that.
You know, you go through all these process and procedures. You go through all these steps to make sure, oh, I'm not saying the wrong thing. Oh, they're not going to hear me. Oh, okay. And you mute all the things. And then when you come back on, you got to remember to unmute all the things. Thank you, Cavan. Appreciate being here. This is going to be awesome. You have questions. We have answers. We're going to let you go first. I want to make sure that you know how to communicate with us. So go to the Q&A box in the toolbar for Zoom. You'll see the Q&A. Type in there where it is you are joining us from today, because I'm seeing a lot of good, friendly faces, a lot of good, friendly names that I've seen many, many times before. JR joining us from Kalispell, Montana. Mo from Rockaway, New Jersey. That's awesome. And Mr. John Powell is in the house. Hey, John's here. We can start now. John Powell, Richmond, Virginia. Super awesome to have you here, brother. Thank you very much. John from Sonoma, California. Thomas from Emery, Calgary, Alberta. Yeah, baby. Hey, you know what that means? We have now gone international, Cavan. How about them apples? I like apples. Yeah. Hey, and some of you are throwing it in the chat box. I want you to know where the Q&A is. So put it in the Q&A. Michael Fox coming in from Somerset, Kentucky. Now, Michael, if there was a J there in the middle initial, I would be a little starstruck at the moment. Shelby from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Shelby, awesome. Thank you. Sal from Fremont Auto Center, Fremont, California. Sal, good to have you here, brother. This is awesome. And you know Sal? You know Sal as well?
Sal and I have shared a couple libations, I would probably refer to them as Apex and SEMA's. But yeah, Spicy Pops at Apex and SEMA. So I look forward to seeing Sal there again here in the next few weeks.
Oh, that's awesome. Yes, we will see you at Apex and SEMA. It's going to be awesome and amazing because we're all going to be there. Jeff McElroy. I hope I'm saying that right, Jeff. Jeff is coming from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Super awesome. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that. You guys are awesome. I also want to give a couple of shout outs. Dwayne, when you and I meet, make sure I tell you my Dwayne joke. You're going to love it. You probably already know it because your name is Dwayne. But anyways, and Dawn from Southern California, thank you very much. Appreciate you joining us, as well as Jackson, Northern Utah. Thank you, Jackson, for being here. Let's see, who else do I recognize? Luke joining us from Northern California. Anybody else? This is awesome. You guys are awesome. This is going to be really good, because what we are talking about today is something that you as a shop owner want. You didn't start a business to have a really expensive job. You started a business because you wanted to be a business owner. And the most successful way of you being a business owner is for you to work on your business and not always in your business. So we're going to talk about what this looks like. And joining us today is the expert. He has been all over North America talking to shops about making the most of your shop, talking about being the best and being the most profitable you can be. You know him. Let's join in clapping our hands together for Cecil Bullard. Cecil, thank you for joining. You are awesome. Thank you for being here. We'll give the, this is the sign language for an applause. And Cecil is going to, he's going to really map out, demonstrate, show those 5 steps that you can take as a business owner to become the best business you can possibly be. So with that, Cecil, let's Let's talk about these 5 steps that every shop can take. I mean, starting today, no matter where they are, no matter what position they're in, this is stuff that they can start with today in their business to make a difference. So as you have questions, audience, type them into the Q&A box. I'll be the voice for you, and I'll voice those questions to Cecil. We want those questions to come as we're going along. So if you're going to wait all the way till step 5 to ask a question about step 1, we're going to have a toe-to-toe talk. So go ahead and type those into the Q&A box. Look forward to your questions. And Cecil, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to start with a brief story. I had a little bout in the hospital last week. When I came out and I got home, my basement was flooded. So called up a plumber because the water heater had gone bad. And the plumber came out, and I asked him, I said, what's your labor rate, if you don't mind me asking? And he told me that the labor rate for the plumbers in the area was about $5.50 an hour. So we're going to start with the step number 1, really, the easiest thing that you can do to increase your profit. And if you are talking to a coach or a consultant out there and they're not talking about this, then you might have the wrong person. And I think sometimes we think to ourselves, well, that's all these guys do, these coaches and consultants, all they ever do is tell me to raise my labor rate. And that's okay, frankly, because that's kind of our job, is to help you move things forward. Now, I can tell you in the last, I don't know, in the last 10 years, labor rates have gone up quite a bit, but we're still not kind of where we need to be. So we need to think about what other trades charge for their labor. I mean, if plumbers in Utah are charging $5.50 an hour, and all they need is a truck and a couple of small tools, and then, plumbing is kind of plumbing. Got to understand a couple of things. Crap rolls downhill. Make sure that your plumbing is facing the right place. We certainly have to have a lot more education, a lot more knowledge. So I say we raise our labor rates. Now, I've always thought that we were this highly skilled, talented group of people, and we just don't understand what our talent is worth. And so I did a little calculator. I took a shop that in 1980 was $70 an hour, and I raised their labor rate by 3% every year. And 3% is average inflation. And that took the shop to over 230. I think it was $234 an hour just by raising 3%. And I can tell you right now, I don't know of too many shops in the United States that are pushing $230 an hour. Now, that's only if we did normal inflation. So let's take a $10 increase in our labor rate. And I know some of you are going, oh, come on, Cecil, I can't do that because it's gonna, I'm gonna lose customers. Well, I can tell you that I've been doing this for 22 years now, and I have probably been preaching this for 22 years. I've probably done it 20, 30, 40 times a year in a class, and I've had thousands and thousands of shop owners raise their labor rate, and I've never had anybody call and go, I lost a bunch of my customers because I had a labor rate increase. So we're going to raise your labor rate by $10. And if you're a typical shop, you got 3 techs, you're about 72% productive. Those 3 techs are producing about 362, 363 hours a month. So if you see a $10 increase, that's going to put another $3,629 a month into your income. Now, also, because you're already paying the bills, that will actually, or should actually, end up in your bottom line. So just a $10 increase is going to give you $43,546 a year. What if you lost 20 customers from your bottom 5%, the bottom customers who never want to pay, who always argue with you about price? What if 20 customers walked away? If those 20 customers spent an average of $500 when they came in and they visit you 1.2 times a year, which is the typical visits, then you would actually still come out ahead at 31,546. Now, if you actually do the math, you'd probably have to lose close to 50 customers to go upside down in a $10 labor rate increase. So let's raise our labor rate by $10 an hour. Most everybody has the ability to do that. Most everybody could do that. And in fact, right now, there's never been a better time to raise your labor rate because everything has become so expensive. Remember, if we have questions, ask them. Go ahead, Jim.
Question is here. Question is here, Cecil. So the question coming from Jack says, how do I know if my labor rate is too high?
I always said when you're chasing away 5% of your clients, you should actively pursue chasing away the bottom 5%. And so, you have shop. It's funny to me. I'll talk to a shop and a shop will say, I can't raise my labor rate, but they're so busy they can't get the work out. They're booked 2, 3, 4 weeks in advance, and they're like, "What should I do?" And I'm like, "Raise your labor rate." Right? When you're booked 2 days in advance, maybe that makes you a little nervous, and you're like, "Okay, I don't know if I want to do that." But when you're booked a week, 2, 3 weeks in advance, a $10 increase, believe it or not, is not going to chase people away. I was in Salt Lake doing a seminar. This is, I don't know, 6, 8 years ago. And so I taught this whole seminar. And about 3 months later, one of the shop owners called me from Salt Lake and he said, "Oh, Cecil, thank you so much. You saved my life. You taught me something and it just changed my life," and et cetera. And I was like, "Okay, well, what did I say?" Because, I don't necessarily remember. And he said, "Well, you told me to raise my labor rate. So I came home and raised my labor rate." And I said, "Okay, how much did you raise your labor rate?" He says, $40 an hour. So I was like, "Oh my God, $40." Now I didn't say raise it $40 an hour, but in truth, at that time, probably the average shop in the Salt Lake area was probably about $90, $95 an hour, and he was 50. So when he raised his labor rate $40 an hour, he got up to 90. He didn't chase any of his customers away. He actually had more customers. And so when you think about that, like typical shop, 300 hours, $40 an hour, now we're talking about $160,000 difference at the end of the year. So, how do you know if your labor rate's high enough or if you've made it too high? And we do have a class on set rates, and we have calculators for all of that. And that stuff is all free. Jimmy will make sure y'all know where to go and how to get that. But I keep raising my labor rate until I'm chasing away the bottom 5%. Now, just as another story, I ran a shop in Mountain View, California for many years. And when I got there, I think we were $106 an hour, and the average shop was probably 80. So when I got there, I raised the labor rate $10 an hour because no, I'm sorry, I raised it to 125. So whatever that is from 106, I went to 125 because 125 was what we needed to pay the bills and make sure that everybody got a good check and everybody's family's taken care of, and Cecil needed to get paid. And when we decided, as I ran that shop over a few years, we said, "Oh, we're going to do loaner cars. So if we're going to do loaner cars, well, I have expense for that. So what's my expense plus profit?" I raised the labor rate $4 an hour. And we decided we were going to wash people's cars because our clients really wanted those things. So, there's an expense to that. So I raised my labor rate $4 an hour. When I left the shop, it's about 15 years ago, when I walked away, 2009, so whatever that is, we were at $158 an hour, and everyone else was at about 100 in this area. So we were $58 an hour higher than anybody else. Guess who had the busiest shop? We did. Most consistently busy because we gave our clients things they wanted that were of value to them. So I would tell you, we kept raising our labor rate. We didn't chase away 5% of our customers. We never chased away more than a very, very small percentage, but the shop became more and more profitable. It isn't
Okay.
always about raising labor rate. There's other stuff. So
Yeah,
go ahead.
no, and there's more questions that are coming in here, Cecil. Going to combine a couple of them. Give a shout out to Sal. First of all, he raised his labor rate $20 an hour 2 months ago and has not chased away any customers. And I wonder from Sal, did you have the same effect that Cecil did, where he attracted even more customers to that shop there in Mountain View, California? Are you experiencing something similar to that? Next question comes from JR. And the question is, what would you consider to be the average labor rate? And I think this gets into some area we might have to pump the brake a little bit.
So setting labor rates is, you got to be careful, right?
Yeah.
So I can't say we should all be 250, but we should all be 250. All right. There should not be a shop in the United States under $230 an hour today. We have not kept up with inflation as an industry, and it's killing us. If you go online, you listen to the text, they're complaining they're not getting paid enough, and they aren't. Shop owners can't pay them more because they don't have the money, because they're not charging enough. And so average labor rate depends on where you are. If you go into Mississippi, Arkansas, probably the lowest labor rates, Kansas. You go to California, on the left coast, probably the highest labor rates. New York City, some of the larger communities will have a much higher labor rate. So if I'm in Southern California, it's kind of interesting because you always have some shops that are like at $100 or under $100 because they're trying to be the cheap shop. And then but if you look at like the more professional shops in, say, Southern California, they're pushing $200 an hour. Okay. But that's unusual because it's Southern California, and there's still $100 an hour shops out there who actually still stay busy in Southern California. And we have a lot of clients around the United States and Canada. We have tons. And what I can tell you from experience is that my higher priced shops are actually more consistently busy than the lower price shops in our programs. We fight more with the cheap guy to build clientele than we do with the expensive guy to build clientele. So I can tell you that your labor rate should be whatever it needs to be in order to pay your technician well. And you can afford to pay about 40% of your labor loaded to a technician. So if I was $150 an hour, I can pay $60 an hour all in to my tech, or about 20% of your sales. So if I'm doing $1 million in business, however many techs I have about 200,000 loaded with the FICA, FUTA, workers' comp, etc. So are there any other questions here?
The questions are flying fast and furious right now through the chat. So I'm keeping up with that. Okay. And what I'm seeing here is a lot of people saying, well, I'm charging this, I'm charging this, I'm charging this. We have a business calculator. Do you think we could offer to shops to say, hey, look, depending on your business, we can help you to determine what your labor rate should be, but we can't tell anybody what their labor rate should be.
Yeah, we can, because if you work with us or you ask us that question specifically, we can look at your numbers and go, this is what your labor rate should be.
Yeah.
Or if we look at what you need to pay a top tech in your area, we can say this is what your labor rate should be in order to support that. But we can't blanket say the whole industry needs to be 250.
Right.
I can actually legally say I believe that the industry should be over 230 as an industry, but what that would mean is that we probably have some guys at 220 and some guys at 320 and a bunch in between, because it really depends on your expenses, how you pay your employees, benefits, all that kind of stuff that would help me determine what the labor rate is. And yes, we have a labor rate calculator that would help us determine that. We have a bunch of different calculators, and Jimmy, I'm pretty sure that any of my guys would be happy to go through that with a shop owner and spend 20 minutes or so and help them understand what that is.
Yeah,
So, all
absolutely.
right, going to the next thing, because we got 4 more, because we want to make you a ton of money. All right, so what would I do with the additional income? Well, heck, give me another $40,000 and we'll see what I can do. Tools, equipment, raises, I don't know, about whatever it is you want to do. All right, number 2, follow a parts matrix. Now, specifically, we're talking about a parts matrix here, but I would also today use a labor matrix. So we're going to talk parts matrix. Stop marking parts up based on I'm going to make 50%, because you don't always make 50%. And if you're saying I'm going to mark up my parts and just double them, and you don't double an engine, then all of a sudden you're making 38%. And so you've lost margin. 58% parts margin is what I'm looking for with a shop. It is not the easiest thing to do, but it's certainly doable. We have lots of shops that do that and a little higher. So I'm going to put a parts matrix in place. A matrix is a pricing scheme that says if I buy a part at $1, I'm going to mark it up 400% or to $4. But if I buy a part at $1,200, I'm only going to mark it up 35%. Would take that $1,200 part, and I'd end up being probably another $800. It would take it up to about $2,000. So I'm using different pricing matrix. I put it in my point of sale, and I leave it there, and I quit getting emotional pricing and saying my customer can't afford it, or they'll be upset because they can buy the part cheaper. The truth is, since I've been working on cars in 42 years, 43 years, whatever it is now, there's always a place for the customer to buy it cheaper. There's always been a place for the customer to buy it cheaper, and there will always be a place for the customer to buy it cheaper. Now, if your pricing scheme is to use manufacturer's suggested list, you're going to end up at about 34%, 35% in your parts margin, which means you'll miss 20%. So if you're a typical shop that does about $1 million in business, and half of what you're selling is parts, that 20% could cost you $100,000 this year on your parts. So what I want to do is I want to increase my parts margin just by 5%. And I want to do that by making, if I do have a matrix, I'm going to adjust my matrix to some minor changes. Or maybe if I don't have a matrix, I'm going to put a matrix in place. So if you're that same shop with 3 techs doing 72%, and we increase your parts margin by 5%, you're going to make an additional $1,450 a month, which is an additional $17,418 annually. Now, if you combine that with the labor, $10 labor increase and a 5% parts increase, that's going to make you just a little less than $61,000 in additional profit. And so somebody's asking a question. Jimmy, who is that? And what's the question?
Mo's raised his hand to ask a question, but he maybe he bumped it. I don't know. There's nothing that's come through yet. So Mo, if you've got a question, go ahead and type it into the Q&A, because we'd love to answer the question. If I was to read Mo's mind at the moment, I would say to you, what goes into that matrix? Mo says the problem with part increase is that folks can look up parts prices on the web. And
they can, and who cares? They could before. I could call the 10 years ago, I could call the local parts store and say in Napa or even the dealer, or I could call the what are the other guys, AutoZone or whatever, and I could always find the part cheaper. We have to not think like that. Of course, my customer can buy the part, but what comes with that part? So even a dealership part, you go to the dealership and you go to the parts department and you buy a part and you pay virtually the same thing that is, I'm going to get 20% off if it's typical. So $100 part, I'm going to buy it for 80, but you're going to buy it for 100. Now, if I buy it for 80 and I sell it for 100, I don't have any margin. I can't pay my bills, and I go broke. And so I use a matrix, and I mark it up more than $100 because I have to, right? So
Yeah.
now I'm selling the part for $100 part. I'm probably selling it for 160 or something like that. But the guy can go to the dealer and buy it for 100. But when you buy that part from the dealer, what does it come with? You know, does it guarantee that that part is what's going to fix your car? No, it does not. If you buy like a headlight switch, your headlights aren't working, and you go buy a headlight switch from the dealer and you put it in the car and you burn it out, or it doesn't work, it doesn't make any difference, you can't take that headlight switch back to the dealer, because they don't care. There's no warranty on its electrical component. And so, you know, when a part comes from the dealer, from their parts department, it comes with the part. We don't know if it'll fit the car. We don't know if it's the right solution for the car. It doesn't come with any real warranty, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I can go to the grocery store and buy a steak. Hell, I can get a decent steak for 12, 16 bucks. But if I go to a nice restaurant, I'm here in Seattle. We went to a restaurant last night. I think their steak was $39. Why would I go to a restaurant, pay $39 for a steak when I can buy one for 12 at the grocery store, or 16? Because it comes cooked. Because if it's not cooked right, they cook me another one because I don't have to do the dishes. You know, there's a lot of reasons. And what we have to get good at is helping our customers understand why buying the part from me, even though they're paying more, makes sense. And we have all these online parts now. I mean, you got Amazon in the parts market. You got Rock Auto, etc. We have all these counterfeit Chinese parts in the country. When you buy a part online, you're crap shooting. You're taking a crapshoot. My clients don't want to do that. My clients want to know that that part is going to fit right, that it's going to have a good warranty on it, that it's going to take care of the problem, and that we're not going to have to buy 6 parts to try and figure out what's going on with the car. So I would tell you that whatever your belief system is, that's what you get rooted in. And I have shops that make plenty of parts margin. It's funny. I have a really good guy I really like. He's very smart. We're very well known in the industry, and he has some shops up in the northern middle part of the country. And he group member, and you know, his parts margin is always around 50%, 51, and we're talking 58 is what we want. And so when you have a conversation with him, he says, "But Cecil, you don't understand where I'm at. You know, people will challenge you if you charge too much for parts, blah, blah, blah." And so he's decided that 52% is what he's going to go for. So he's normally 49, 50%. Well, I have other shops in other areas that are just pretty much the same. They have the same kind of customers, that are making 61% on their parts because they believe that they can do it, and they found a way to talk to their clients. If you have a hard time helping your clients understand why buying the part from you at whatever price you need to sell it is the right thing to do, then what you need is to have training, you know, service advisor, sales training. So, all right, I'm gonna move on. And I don't know if I answered that completely or not. Jimmy will also make sure that you guys get the opportunity to have the parts matrix if you want that. Number 3, it's funny because I always look at what all the coaching companies do, and there's 3 big things they do. They tell you to raise your labor rate. They tell you to put a parts matrix in place, and then they also tell you to increase your average repair order, which is kind of what we're doing here. According to US.gov, the American fleet in 2019, now this is an old statistic, had $2 billion worth of viable work that should have been done on the fleet, but wasn't done on the fleet. And so, you know, you ask yourself, with about 200,000 shops, that's about $1 million in serviceable work that came through the average shop that either didn't get found, didn't get presented, or didn't get sold. So is it a problem with us finding the work? Is it a problem with us estimating the work? I know in some shops, they're like, well, geez, I don't want to tell the customer about that because, man, if I do that, then he's probably not even going to fix the car. He'll go out and get a new car. Um, uh, and so we have these issues, these thoughts that we have. My thought is that we are supposed to look the car over no matter what. And if there's something on that car that needs to be taken care of or serviced, I want to make sure that I have that conversation with my customer. Now, I'm going to help them understand why it's better for them to do it than to go get a used car or even buy a new car. And sometimes I'm going to win that battle, and sometimes I'm not going to win that battle. If you're a small shop, say 500,000 in annual revenue, and you have an average repair order of $400, and in order to do 500,000 in revenue, I would need about 1,250 cars, about 100 cars a month, a little more. And what if we raised our average repair order by $50? And I don't mean pricing, because we're gonna, if we raise our labor rate $10 an hour, then our average repair order is going to come up about $12. If we raise our parts margin 5%, then our average repair order is going to come up another $4 or $5. So now we've got $16 that our average repair order is raising. What I'm saying is, if we do a better inspection, digital vehicle inspections sell more work. Digital vehicle inspections help customers feel more comfortable about doing the work. And believe it or not, a good DVI actually protects the shop also. And so what I want to do is I want to work with my staff on the inspection process, just to make sure that we have standards in place. When do we recommend certain things? How do we recommend those? And if we do that well, and we do a great inspection on the customer's car, then we're going to find things that need to be sold, that should be sold. I'm always kind of blown away when I'm talking to somebody who has a low average repair order, and I'll say, okay, they'll be in say Mississippi, and I'll say, how many cars did you work on last month? And they'll say, well, we worked on 200. So okay, great. And how many brake flushes did you recommend off of 200 cars? And they'll say, well, we don't know. They don't know what they recommended, but they sold 12 brake flushes off of 200 cars. And the way that I look at it is statistically. So if I'm in a place where there's high humidity, Mississippi, brake fluid is hygroscopic. It sucks moisture out of the air. I should see a 50 to 60% failure rate on brake systems. Brake fluid, too much moisture. If half of my 2,000 cars failed, then 200 cars failed that month, then I have 100 cars that I should have recommended a brake flush on. Now, if I recommended 100 brake flushes because that's what the car needed, because we tested it, shouldn't I sell about 50% of those? Shouldn't I have done 50 brake flushes instead of 12? And so I want to make sure that, number one, we're checking every system, brakes, coolant, the things that we can really test scientifically. I want to make sure we test. I want to make sure that the best person to look the car over, the person that's going to understand what they see, looks the car over, so that if the car needs anything, I can recommend it to my client. Now, I kind of understand that $50 is kind of probably unrealistic. Actually, if we're missing things right now on our inspection, probably we would raise our average order double that. But I'm going to just use $50. So if I had that number of cars and I raised my average repair order by $50, I'd sell an additional $62,500 in service in my business, and probably about half of that would drop to my bottom line, or so I'd make about another 30,000. So also statistically, when we look at shops that are doing good inspections, general repair shops, they will have about a $700 to $800 average repair order today. And then a lot of our European shops, that will be 2,200, 2,400. So it depends on the kind of cars you're working on, what you're going to find. But I've always kind of tracked that because I wanted to make sure we were doing our job correctly and that we were making the money that we needed to. So now, what if we really did a better inspection? We improved our sales process too, so that our salespeople could actually sell one more thing on the average car that walked in our shop, and we raised our average repair by $150. We worked with, I don't know, 1,200 shops, 1,400 shops over the years, and we've seen average repair orders go up dramatically in the shops that we work with. If we raised our average repair by $150, that would put another 187,000 plus in business, and over 90,000 of that would drop to my bottom line. Now, I want to make something really, really clear, because some of you are like, oh, this guy is just a greedy guy. It isn't that. I want to make sure that if the car needs something, that we're mentioning it. I don't ever want to sell something to a customer they don't need. But based on my data, based on my experience, I want to say, if your brakes are at 230 seconds, I want to sell you a set of brakes. If your moisture content in your brake fluid is above 2%, I want to sell you a brake flush. If your pH in your coolant is below 8, I want to sell you a coolant service. There are scientific things that we know when we should be selling certain jobs. And I want to make sure that I don't have any cars leak through my business that we're not totally checking out. So, and I also know that increasing car count is a little difficult and expensive. So I don't just want to increase car count and keep the low average repair order. I want to bring my average repair order up and maybe not increase car count, because it's harder to deal with more cars. Every car that comes in, I have to inspect. Every car that comes in, I have to do paperwork. Every car that comes in, I almost have to have a phone call with that customer, maybe 2 or 3, to sell the work. I'd rather work on fewer cars with a higher average repair order if that's what the car needs. Okay. Jimmy? I know I saw the chat go crazy. So
It sure did, because I love the DVI. I love digital inspections. I was asking everybody who's doing digital inspections. Some are saying yes, some are saying no. Some are saying, yeah, I definitely need to do this because I need to give on this, cover my behind, make sure that I'm covered when the customer leaves, that if they deny things, I need to be covered. But also, Sal saw his average repair order jump by $200 on average. That's pretty sweet, Sal. Kudos to you, brother. That's awesome. Second thing, they were talking about the 300% rule, and I love the 300% rule, Cecil. That every car gets inspected, every recommendation is estimated, and every estimate is given to the customer.
Yeah, well, you know me, Jimmy. I always have to be a little better or bigger, so I have the 500% rule.
Okay.
And the 500% rule is every car gets a ticket written on it. Even if my service advisor chooses to walk out there and look at the car himself or herself, I'm still writing a ticket on that car. I want to know that that car came in. I want to know that we did something, looked at something, etc.
Even if it's just checking the tires.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me. I want the thing written up.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
also I kind of put a rule in place. I don't want my service advisor diagnosing cars in the driveway. So
Yes.
it's a bad idea. And you know, you go in and you put a headlight or a tail light in the vehicle, and 2 weeks later the customer comes back and says, you know, that tail light you put in my car, it's bad, right? And you didn't charge them anything. And frankly, you put the left tail light in, and now it's the right tail light. They don't know the difference, but you don't have any documentation, right?
Yeah.
The world's a crazy place right now. I need as much documentation as possible. So rule number 1, you know, first 100%, everything gets a ticket written.
Okay.
Second 100%, every vehicle gets test driven, either before or after the repairs. Okay.
Okay.
And
Okay.
in the test drive, a good technician will pick up on things like it pulls left, the brakes vibrate when you use them, the windshield wipers don't work properly. You know, you're doing things on the test drive. All of my guys had a digital thermometer. We were in Palm Springs, and they put that thermometer in the air conditioning, and if the vent temperature wasn't you know, at 50 degrees or lower, then we'd recommend a service on the air conditioning. So, you know, that you're just doing these things on the test drive. So second part of the rule, 100% get test driven. And some people will go, Well, yeah, but I can't because the car didn't run when it came in. Well, but if you're not test driving it after you fixed it, something else is going to come up that gets missed that you now become accountable for, right? So I want that test drive, and I want a good person that actually can hear and knows about the car to test drive the car, because that's, my ears and my feeling for the car help me understand what's going on with the car. All right. Now,
Okay, and I have a question on the test drive. Do you recommend, or is it a best practice to have a course A, B, and a C, like a 1 mile, 5 mile,
yes,
10-mile
yes.
course?
Yeah, and I would actually, so in my company, I had a standard sheet. The standard sheet said what was unsafe, defined, terms. What's a leak? What's a drip? And so every technician had a standard sheet. On the back of the standard sheet was the 1.2 mile test drive. You leave the shop, you make a left turn, you go down this far down that street, you make a right turn on that street, you go over the speed bumps there, et cetera, et cetera. So we had a 1.5 mile test drive. We had about just close to 5 mile test drive, and we had a 20 mile test drive. And one of the reasons I did that was because I wanted to make sure that we're, really being able to test drive the car properly, making a left turn, making a right turn, getting it up to speed, going over some dips, things like that, that would help me understand if there was something that needed to be done with the car. And then, of course, if you're doing any kind of heavy duty work, or, I put heads on a vehicle, I want to drive that thing at least 20 miles to make sure that it gets hot, make sure that the monitors get set, all of that, and make sure that if there's any air in the system, we get that out. It's just a smart thing to do. All right. So number 3, now we talk about inspection. Every car after the test drive gets inspected. And we have if you don't use digital, a very thorough inspection, and realize either if it's digital or non-digital, you're not diagnosing here. You're inspecting. So I have a lot of guys that they're like, well, I just want to hook up the scanner. And then the next thing you know, we pulled 3 codes, and then we want to find out what those codes are. So now we're spending 20 minutes and we're not getting paid. I don't want to do that. If it needs to have the scanner hooked up, then I want to sell the customer,
Hour
a
of diagnostic.
diagnostic or whatever
Yeah.
it is, right? Whatever we're calling a test, a series of tests. And then also, like, if there's an oil leak, I don't want my guy getting a can of cleaner out, cleaning it up and trying to find the oil leak. I want them to recommend that we sell a clean and dye test.
Yeah.
Because you use a can of my brake cleaner, it costs me money. And if you're going to spend 20 minutes trying to figure out where the oil leak's coming from, I don't mind as long as we're getting paid. Not my car. I don't want to pay for it. And then the last part of that is I can't tell you how many times I had a technician take a brief look, clean it up, tell me it had an oil pan gasket leaking. And I sold an oil pan gasket. And then a week later, we found out that the intake was leaking. And now we're kind of responsible because we told the customer the oil pan gasket would fix his leak, but it didn't. So especially with things like oil leaks and noises, I want to have the time to do a proper diagnostic, because that's going to help me understand the car and know exactly what to recommend to the customer and get it right the first time, so I don't have to be responsible for all the other stuff that we didn't find. Okay. So I want to have a really good inspection by a qualified tech. And I will spend a lot of time working with my techs to make sure that we have a very good inspection, because I owe it to my customers. I don't want someone coming in thinking we checked their car, we didn't check it out. And I don't want my customers leaving with problems that they don't know about, because when they brought their car to me, now it's my responsibility, right? And then next is the estimating, and estimating is 2 parts. Estimating is what does the tech document and how, and then what does the service advisor document and how. And I have a very specific setup for my techs, because there's certain information that the service advisor needs. And if you do it right, then you don't do a lot of talking, because it's done digitally. What does the car need? Why? What parts do you need to do the job correctly? And how much time do you think it's going to take? And I do want my tech to tell me if there's something unusual, a lot of rust here, whatever. My tech needs to tell my service advisor that, so that we charge the customer enough time. And then last but not least, We have estimating, everything gets estimated. Everything gets presented to the customer, and you don't have to sell everything, right? When you put things in order, the first thing that you write on the ticket is what the customer came for. That's the first thing we're going to talk about. Makes the most sense. You're probably going to say yes. Once you've said yes, you're more open to saying yes again. Now we're going to talk about safety issues. I want to have that conversation second. Then I'm going to talk about things that will save you money if they're done together. Um, and then I'm going to talk about maintenance. And last, I'm going to talk about cosmetics and electives. And the reason I have cosmetics and electives on the ticket is so I can take them off. If you don't have enough money, I'll pull that stuff off. But I'm certainly going to do what you brought the car in for, the safety things, the things that save you money if we did them now, and probably a lot of the maintenance because my customers wanted to maintain their vehicle.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to watch as an owner or manager, I'm watching our sell rate. What did we offer? What did we sell? Because if our sell rate's below 50%, I think we need some help. I need to be teaching my people how to sell better.
Yeah, need some sales training right there.
Build relationships, etc. All right. Any more questions in this area before I move forward?
No, that was perfect. Probably the last question would be, if you're doing DVIs, do you let a technician use their cell phone? Do you have a laptop for them, a tablet for them?
Strangely enough, recently I had a client call me.
Oh, I forgot about this one.
A naked picture of the technician was sent in with the DVI to a customer because they were using their own cell phone and they happened to have some naked pictures that they were texting to somebody. I don't know who or how, not my thing, but and the female service advisor, it went through her. She caught it. All right.
Thank heavens.
But now I have a service advisor who's seen a naked picture of my technician. We don't allow techs to use their own phone. We have either a phone or a tablet for our techs because I don't want if you've decided, if you're an adult and you've decided to send naked pictures to somebody, that's your business, not my business. Okay. Yeah. And there's nothing illegal about that. So who cares? But if a naked picture gets mixed in with my DVI and it gets to a customer, now I'm in big trouble. I don't want that to happen. And in this case, the employee had to be terminated because it opens the business up for a huge lawsuit. And so now we lost a really good tech because we didn't have them have a separate thing that they would use. So
we highly recommend.
Yes, having something different that they would use that is specific to the shop where their own personal pictures and stuff would not be mixed into that. That way you don't have any chance of anything going wrong. And if you'd asked me a week ago about that, I probably would have said, who cares? But today I can't say that, right? I just can't say that. So, all right. So that's number 3. Number 4, improve your effective labor rate. So effective labor rate is what you really charge on average. So every shop has multiple labor rates, whether you know it or not. So when you do an oil change, maybe you're $80 an hour, $90 an hour because you charge a little less because you want to be competitive. When you get a normal vehicle in your normal shop, let's say I get a Toyota come in my shop, I have a rate, my rates say 125, 130. That's my rate for that. I get a problem child, a car that's been in multiple shops and they can't figure it out. I'm not charging 125. I'm going up to $200 an hour on this car, and I'm starting out at 3 or 4 hours because I know I'm going to have that kind of time invested. So most of the shops that we currently work with will have 5 or 6 different labor rates. When we do diag, we have a labor rate that's about 1.5 times our normal rate. Because diag is my best technician with my most expensive equipment and a huge liability because we have to diagnose it properly, do the right thing, or I end up paying for it. So what you do is you take your dollars brought in and divide it by the hours that you charged, assuming that when you do, say, an oil change and you're charging less, you're actually building the 5/10 into it, even though it's only bringing me $40. And assuming that when you do comebacks, you put the hours in, but you put $0, and then it will tell us kind of effectively what our labor rate is. So here's a typical shop. They got a $120 posted rate. Today they're going to do 8 hours of regular $120 jobs. They're going to do 6 oil changes at $60 an hour. So they're going to bring in $120 on 3 hours worth of work. 6 times 0.5, 3 hours. They're going to have 2 hours of warranty work, and they're going to do 9 vehicle inspections, which take 5/10 of an hour, but they're not charging their customer. But they are paying the technician that time. So they're going to bring in a total of $1,080, and it's 17.5 hours if you add up all the hours. And if we divide that together, we actually are making $61.71 an hour. That's the effective labor rate of this shop today. Well, I think I'm making 120, but I'm really making 61. And I cannot tell you how many times I have been in a shop where their labor rate's 130 and we do their effective labor rate and they're 87. It's so much lower because they're not paying attention to that. So we're going to make some changes in this particular shop. What if we converted our oil change from an oil change, so we're not being compared to the Jiffy Lubes and the other stuff, to some kind of a minor service, a K service, Uncle Bill special service, and we raise the rate to $90 an hour? And what if we charged 8/10 so we could pay for the inspection and get paid at $90 an hour for that inspection instead of really only charging 4 or 5/10? What if we also provided a comprehensive inspection as part of that, so we have something to sell that's worth more than just an oil change? And then what if we did better at warranty? So we paid attention to, is it a parts problem? Is it tech? Got our techs trained up, and we were able to reduce our warranty. So what would that look like? It might look something like this. So today we're going to do 10 hours of regular work, bring in $1,200. We're going to have 6 services, but now they're at $90 an hour and they're 8/10 instead of 5/10, because since it's not an oil change, I can charge a little more for it. What if we had 1 hour of warranty work instead of 2? And because we now are charging for the inspection as part of this service package, I don't have any inspections at no charge. So now I brought in $1,632 and I billed out 15.8 hours. So my effective labor rate goes from just under $62 to $103.29 an hour. So if I compare that, that's an additional $657 almost a day in additional labor that I'm bringing in because my effective labor rate is higher. So I'm going to pay attention to that, and I'm going to do that. And then, we're open 250 days. I should have the math here. Can't quite do it in my head, but if we made another 600 a day times 250 days, what is that? $120,000. It's substantial. It's probably, I think that's about what it is. I think we have it later. So, and then, so are there questions on effective labor rate here? Again, I'm watching that chat go up, so I'm assuming there might be 1 or 2.
Yeah. There was some questions coming through, and Thomas asked a question about line 2 being charged to the customer. I'm asking Thomas, which line 2 is he asking about? And then what's a good average rate to charge for a tire change, coming from Marvin?
When I've done a lot of work with Big O, Goodyear, etc. We've done a lot of work with these guys, and it's kind of interesting when you first come in. They're not, they're probably their average margin on tires is probably about 24%. We've actually raised margin on tires up to about 38% with several tire stores, but there's a lot of different tips and tricks to get that done. And so on a tire change, if I'm not a tire store, in my shops, we charged $100 an hour on our tire stuff, and we charged 5/10 for 2 tires mount, balance, install, and then we charged an hour for 4 tires. So we were a little lower labor rate, but that's how we did it back in the day. Today I might be $120 now instead of 100 because it's further on. The other thing that we did is we charged a tire install package, which include the weights, the TPMS seals, or the brain damage when you get old. The where you put the air in. Can't
The
remember the
caps,
exact.
the valve stem.
Well, the valve stem itself. So we charged between $7 and $14 a tire for the install kit. It's funny too because customers never quote unquote said, "Oh, well, the tire's $120." They never looked at the install kit and said, "Why am I paying for that?" Never once had a question about it. So it was easily accepted. So,
Yeah.
and I think, I would look at market. I'm not trying to be competitive with the discount tire down the street. I do tires in my shop because my customer wants us to do it. It's convenient for them. So I don't have to be priced whatever the discount tire is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in Discount Tire, from experience, because I've been a frequenter of Discount Tire here recently, they're charging more than just the tire. There is an install kit and other stuff
Other
that they're
things.
charging.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So, question for you here. I'm going to change channel here a little bit. Thomas came back with a little bit more explanation. So, on this slide, Cecil, step 4, second line, 6 services, $90 an hour. That's what we're charging the customers, $90 an hour, correct?
At 8/10. Yes.
At 8/10.
Instead of
So,
a 5/10 oil change at $60 an hour. So now I don't have a $49 oil change. I have a $120 service. And here's the thing. If you had a 1980, I don't know, Ford or Chrysler or Toyota, you kind of expected that car to last about 100,000 miles, 120,000. And at 80,000, you were getting head gaskets, other big problems, and in the 1980s. And so changing the oil was a big deal, right?
yeah.
You got the car in 4 times a year. I ran a shop for 6 years. We had a 6-month oil service, 6,000 miles, 6 months, because we ran 300 oil samples and we did not find real deterioration until about 5,000 miles. So we changed our oil change to an oil service. It was a minor service, and we included different things. And so it's hard to compare it and price it against a $29 Jiffy Lube oil change. Well, the other thing is, if you've been to Jiffy Lube recently, they're about $89 for their synthetic oil change. And my guy is smarter than their guy. I pay him more. We're less likely to have a problem, more experienced.
Yeah.
My oil filter is a better oil filter, and I'm going to make sure that the right oil gets in your car, not just the oil we have. So, and I'm not talking down a Jiffy Lube, but what I do is not the same thing as what Jiffy Lube does. I don't want to sound like them. I don't want to look like them. I want to have an oil service, and I want to build a relationship with my customer that they understand the value of that DVI and that 10 minutes they're going to spend with my service advisor, the information I'm going to give them. So most of the shops we have are probably their least expensive service is their minor service or their oil service. And it's probably today about $129, where the Jiffy Lubes are about $89 for their oil change. And if you've built your whole business on coupons and cheap oil changes, then this will be a struggle for you. But we've helped a lot of companies over the years shift their customer base to a better customer. And frankly, most of the time, we don't even lose very many of the oil changes because we help them understand why the service is better for them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the world's changing. Today, I would tell you that the oil, of course, we're going to change your oil and filter. That's a part of servicing your car. But the real important part is having a technician that knows and understands your car, look at your car, because they can find things when they're inexpensive to repair, as opposed to waiting for it to break down. You're going to be stranded. It's going to be inconvenient. And then it's going to cost you money that you don't plan on. So kind of let us help you take care of your car, and then it's going to be better for you.
I love
So
it.
that's
I love it.
my 2 cents here.
Oh, and I totally agree. And I think everybody in the industry would agree as well, is if you take care of your car, it's going to last a lot longer. And here we are, top of the hour. We know everybody is time is limited. This is
Almost
being
done.
recorded. So if you need to bounce, we totally understand. We still have some value to bring to those of you who are able to stick around and watch for a few more minutes. So with that, Cecil, bring us home.
Step five, workflow. Usually when we have unproductive technicians, it's about workflow. It's not about lazy techs. It's about managing my workflow. So I'm going to improve my workflow. Service advisor needs the following information. I'm going to make sure the estimates are written well. What does the car need? Why does it need it? How much time do you think it's going to take, Mr. Technician? And then what's the parts you need? I'm going to make sure that my service advisor gets that. That's going to bring the time down that the service advisor has the ticket. We're going to get the ticket sold faster, which is going to help the technicians have more time to work on the car and less time standing around. It seems difficult, but it's not. It's extremely simple. I'm going to work on all the workflow. I'm going to work on my scheduling. I'm going to change my dispatch. I'm going to make sure that estimating is done in the most judicious, quick time as possible, so that I can increase productivity. So let's say that my effective labor is 103.29 from before, and that my parts to labor ratio is 45% of what I sell as parts and 55% of what I sell as labor, which would be kind of typical for our industry. So that means that when I sell an hour of parts and labor, I'm worth $187.99. So if I could get an hour and a half more out of my technician, because I go from 72% productivity up to 90% productivity, what I'm actually doing is I'm generating per technician another $282 a day, which when we do the math, it's $70,000 in additional work, because I worked on my workflow and I got that cleaned up and increased my productivity. So about half of that would probably go to my bottom line, puts about another $35,000 in my bottom line. I think that every shop could probably use some help. Even the best shops could use some help on their productivity and their workflow. And if we clean that up, we could generate a lot more money in the business. I think this is one of the problems we have in the industry that is really affecting us. So I'm going to do all 5 of the things that Cecil suggested, and I'm gonna raise my labor rate $10 an hour. It's going to bring me $43,000. I'm going to increase my parts margin by 5%. It's going to bring me 17. Increase my average repair order by $50. It's going to bring me 62. I'm going to improve my effective labor rate by $20. It's going to bring me 85,000, and I'm going to work on my workflow, get my technicians up to close to 100% productivity. Is going to bring me 70,000. That's a little over $271,000. Well, what if only half of it? What if we only brought in half of that, and then half of that fell to the bottom line? That's $70,000 for the typical shop. I can tell you that the average shop that we bring into the Institute is probably losing somewhere between about $140,000 and $200,000 a year to inefficiencies, minor pricing changes, workflow issues, inspection issues, and it's pretty easy for us to help them to beat that and to get this money into their bottom line. Now, Jimmy, we also offer a no risk, no cost analysis of the business and what we might be able to do for you. I'm done. Are there any other questions?
Sign me up for the $70,000 to the bottom line. Just go ahead and just send the check right on over. That'd be great.
Well, you got to do a little work, Jimmy. You can't. You got to do a little work. I'm sorry.
And that's the beauty of our industry, the automotive industry. We are made up of people that know how to work, and that we're going to go to work and we're going to get stuff done. We know what it takes. with a little bit of guidance, we can definitely get through there. So part of the question, last question, if you will, or if anybody still has questions, go ahead and type them into the Q&A, is about the effective labor rate, the ELR. How can we improve the ELR? Is it monitor? Is it improving process? Do we have to change our programs, our process, our procedures? How do we change that ELR?
There's a bunch of so the easy things, the quick things, raise your labor rate. That's a push one button. Affecting your effective labor rate's a little more challenging. You have to figure out where you're at and where you should be, and then you have to look for the inefficiencies and make the adjustments. You want to get rid of warranty as much as possible. I don't think you ever get rid of all your warranty. There's always something that's going to happen, but you want to reduce that. You want to make sure that when a lot of shops will bring a car in for a diag and they're charging an hour, and the tech spends 3 hours on the diag, but they're only charging an hour, so the tech's being paid 3 hours, but it's an hour's worth of income. You want to make sure you're not doing that. So you want to have multiple labor diagnostics, three different diagnostics. You want to have a 1 hour, you want to have a 3 hour, and you want to have a 6 hour. And so you want to make sure that, like, if a car came in my shop and it had one code, that 1 hour would get the job done. And my techs would spend about 45 minutes on the car, and then they'd do paperwork for 10 minutes and it would be handed in and we'd be done. But if they pulled the codes and there was 12 codes, we're no longer on the diag one because we know we're going to spend more time. So instantly the customer would get a call, hey, we found that you have multiple problems. We're going to need more time. And so now we went up to a 3 hour diag and got paid for that. And I think right now, we as techs, I know techs, I are one, and we're like, I got to figure this thing out. And so I only have an hour, but I need more time, and we take more time, but we're not paying attention to that. We have to pay attention because you go to the lawyer. I always make this joke. If I see my lawyer walking down the street, I go to the other side of the street, because if I stop and talk to him, he's going to charge me he's going to charge me a quarter of an hour because he had to think about my case or whatever. And I don't think we want to necessarily be that bad. I want to help the client out. I want to do the right thing, but I also want to get paid for it. That's what I do, and that's how I feed my family and etc. And I just think that nobody's paying attention. So we need to pay attention. How often are we doing a 1 hour diagnosis that's taking 3 hours? We got to stop that. How do we fix that? We got to look at our canned jobs that we canned 12 years ago, and we got to where we were $60 an hour, and now we've raised our labor rate 3 times or 4 times or 5 times, but we didn't raise the can job. So it's a bunch of little things. But if I can get $20 more per hour and I've got 20 hours a day, that's $400 a day that literally comes in and would basically drop straight to my bottom line. I'm with you, Sal. Pay attention. And that's looking at key process data, through like our dashboard where you have all that information, so you can pay attention. You need to have data, and you need to understand what that data is, because then that will help you know where to put your limited time and energy and get the best result.
Yeah, I agree. And it seems like a lot of times when we're in the fight, our head is down and we're swinging as frantically as we possibly can, it's hard to pay attention to those details. It really does help to be able to work on the business rather than in the business. And that's step one. Step two is hire yourself a coach and a trainer. Hire a coach and a trainer that is in your corner, helping you to pay attention to those details. They can see things that you don't see.
I don't know how many clients, probably 40 or 50% of our clients came to us losing money or making very little. And very little is I'm making 60, 70,000 a year, but I'm not making anything else. And those very same people are now making $400,000 a year, 2 years later. So it isn't, I don't think it's difficult, but it does take work, and it does take investment. And I think, even in my own company, the chief executive officer I was at $1 million in revenue, I can't be the same chief executive officer at 5 million in revenue,
Right.
because we won't succeed. So I have to learn and change as my company evolves and grows. And I think we all need to do that. So hire a coach. And if you don't like us, I mean, we got a great program. We are very, very successful. But there's a couple of guys I could certainly recommend if you don't like us.
Yeah, well, and if maybe you need to take it at your own pace, maybe a coach and a trainer isn't in your corner at the moment. We've got a website, gearforshops.com. LMS. It's got quite a few different free videos that you can watch online. Consume
They'll
that
give you
information
like
implement that
this.
stuff.
Yeah.
And then you'll get yourself in a position that you can then hire a coach and a trainer that's going to take you to that next level. How many of you would love to make $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 out of your shop?
I just want to thank everybody for attending and for their time today. I know how valuable your time is. So from my heart, thank you, everyone.
Yes. Email address for us is jimmy@wearetheinstitute.com. jimmy@wearetheinstitute.com. We will be sending you an email with information. If you'd like to have a copy of the 5 steps workbook, type your email address in the chat. We'd be happy to send it to you. If you'd like a copy of the pricing parts matrix, type your email address in the chat. We'd be happy to send it to you. And with that, thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Cecil, thank you for your expertise, your insight, your wisdom. And with that, Cavan, we'll turn the time back to you, brother.
Thank you,
That sounds
Cavan,
great.
and thank you, Shop Boss.
Sounds great. Thanks, Cecil. Thanks, Jimmy. Everyone, thanks for staying on a little bit longer. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon and reach out to these guys. They obviously know their stuff. Get their info. Take care, everyone. See ya.